What was the catalyst to you leaving NME? I don't know if we covered that really.
Well, it was just I knew it was over. It was the art. It was kids watching the Arctic Monkeys, knowing lyrics to tracks I hadn't even heard yet. That was 2006, and I'm like, I've had a good run here. I've done really well. Go out on a high. And I was having lots of conversations with people about lots of exciting things that I could do in 2007. And then the global financial collapse hit and the recession hit, and all of those conversations dried up overnight. And I was, everybody who had a job hung on to their job, and I had a job, and it was a good job, and it was well paid. And it was like, right, you don't move. So I was there for 2 years longer than I'd probably intended to be, just waiting for the right thing to happen. But by the end of it, sales were so poor because there was nothing you could do. Nobody wanted a magazine format anymore. We had a website that was speaking to more people on a weekly basis than the NME had ever spoken to, and nobody gave a shit. All anybody cared about were the kind of 6 monthly sales figures of this legacy format. And I was just done with it. I was so beaten up by the whole process because it was just like being on just sliding down a mountainside in an avalanche, and there was nothing to grab onto. There's nothing you could do to get yourself back up. And we were doing all the right things elsewhere, and we'd launched merchandising and ticketing and 6 national tours a year, and the NME Awards US and NME Radio and NME TV. That was my toy box, right? There's all of that stuff. I was able to run, and it was great. But you could not get the magazine sales up, and it was like, is it because it's not populist enough, not mainstream enough, or is it because it's not cool enough? And neither of those was the answer, right? It was because it was a fucking magazine and nobody was buying magazines anymore, because they all had smartphones. So it was over for me. And also there were new bands coming along that I just didn't have an affinity with. Vampire Weekend and the Maccabees, right? Important bands, without a doubt, important bands that I could see Chrissy got and was really excited about, but they weren't touching me in the same way. I didn't feel it inside. I didn't want to go to the gigs to see them. I didn't want to hang around in the same after parties as them afterwards. And you go, and I also got to a point where I wasn't looking forward to festivals. And it's like, fuck me, if you get to a point where you're not looking forward to going to a festival, fuck off and make way for somebody who is, granddad. Right. So it's like, I've done my time for the sake of the paper and the scene and the journalists and the talent that needs to be given space to come up. Because if Chrissy becomes editor, somebody becomes Depp, and somebody becomes, it's like those, it was log jammed. It was just like, I am the problem and not the solution. So, I got offered a job which felt like a possible solution, and I just took it. Was it the right job? Didn't matter. It was just something to get the fuck out of there more than anything else. And as it was, I think, Chrissy did a brilliant job of taking the magazine cooler. She almost overnight, with a click of her fingers, made the magazine really cool by talking about a whole lot of music that I hadn't engaged with. And visually it found its groove immediately, and it sold, it crashed sales wise, absolutely crashed, because the answer was not cooler, the answer was not mainstream, the answer was that kind of magic formula that sits in between, and it just wasn't possible to achieve it anymore. And she ended up putting Oasis on the cover an awful lot, which is what you do when you're chasing sales.